And now I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker. Again, I'm sorry if I say it wrong. Rick Mans. All right. He's the social lead for Capgemini in the Netherlands. And on a day-to-day basis, he's working on social media cases for several Fortune 500 clients. He also gives guest lectures, like today, at several universities to make students aware of the impact social media will have on their life in general and on enterprises in particular in the near and not so near future. His case study is the social workplace, rethinking communication and collaboration in the age of social networks. Please welcome Rick.
Well, good morning. As Tricia correctly pronounced, my name is Rick Mans, which is fairly easy for most American people. I work with Capgemini. Capgemini is a global company present in 40 countries worldwide, having 120,000 colleagues. I'm a tweeter. I'm available on @RickMans. Most presentations, and probably also this one, I will upload on my SlideShare account, so you can look at it afterwards. And if you're interested in the things I write, for example, on my blog, you can visit don'tmindrick.com. And for those who find it a curious title for a blog, my wife came up with the title. What I see is that the perfect storm is nearing the enterprise. Immense changes for the enterprise in the upcoming 2 to 3 years. First of all, there are the 10-year computer cycles. And every 10 years, there's a new aspect in computing. Some of you might know mainframes, desktop computing, mobile computing, and since a few years, we are in the social revolution. And what's particular around this 10-year computing cycle is that every 10 years, 10 times as much users in the previous cycle are participating. Good example for the social revolution, Facebook is now nearing the 1 billion active users per month, which means that 1 in 2 people with an internet account have a Facebook account. Then there are consumers, people like you, who are talking on Twitter, on Facebook, on many channels about organization, companies sharing their opinions with friends, sharing their complaints with others. However, there's a big digital divide between organizations, their customers, their clients, and other stakeholders. Some organizations might even think, well, social, if we just wait long enough, it will just go away and we can go on with our business. And that's true, because if you wait long enough, you don't have a business, so in the end it will go away. On the other hand, there's the outside world, there's also the inside world. Many of you, I assume, have colleagues, and many colleagues have questions on a day-to-day basis, and especially the newer generation is used to asking a question somewhere online and receiving an answer within 5 minutes, 15 minutes. They're not used to going to a big knowledge repository, trying to find fishing on mobile and finding a document from the late 90s, which is not really answering to their needs. They're used to social networking. So social networking, as leads the expectancy for social networking in the enterprise, is even more important than having a company laptop or a company phone for the new generation. And what's really special, this is a piece of research we have done, is that the last 5 to 10 years, basically we focused on the wrong things. What most companies did was optimizing business processes. And that's very common because that's from the industrial age, and industrial is all around processes and optimizing them, making them more lean, and I would say Henry Ford indeed was a leader in that. And you see the only person or role which is working a lot with business processes is the transactional worker. However, most knowledge workers, which most work is nowadays, spend only 7% of their time on doing something with business processes. So why even care to optimize 7%? There's a lot more to optimize. There's 80 to 90% of the time is spent on knowledge work and collaboration. So if you could optimize only 10% of that 80 to 90%, it's so much a bigger gain than just refactoring a process flow in SAP. And to introduce social media in a proper way within the workplace, you basically need 3 components. You need a repository, somewhere you put documents, information, which is rather persistent and doesn't change that often. You need a collaboration workspace, and for example, Project Place might be such a collaboration workspace, where you can do structured collaboration. Work together with your team, group of people, to achieve a certain goal. And then there's enterprise social networking, which is the virtual water cooler, in which people can interact on an ad hoc basis without predefined goals, but creating immense value for the enterprise. And over the last kind of tools, that's what my presentation will be. It will be our journey with Yammer, which is already, well, taking now place over 4 years, and which has brought us a long way. And like I said, in September 2008, when Yammer won TechCrunch Disrupt, a conference, a few, to be precise, 38 users thought it was interesting to join Yammer. We didn't have a clue why, but we thought, yeah, it could be interesting. And the month afterwards, we got 22 people joining Yammer, so we were 60 people, which is a healthy bunch. Not that much, but it could be interesting. In March 2009, all of a sudden, we had 1,000 users. And that was the moment in time we were thinking, well, this is interesting, but it's getting a bit out of hand. We don't know anybody, and we got a lot of questions which are repeated, and sometimes we have to tell people what to do and what not to do. So the thing we did was plain and simple. We used our wiki to create a code of conduct with the first, well, basically 1,000 people. Everybody could write the code of conduct, participate, and endorse it. And the best thing was, this is 2009, and we released late 2010 our external social media guidelines. And those external social media guidelines are based for like 80% on the work the people did on the code of conduct. So it's real groundswell, no top-down push, all bottom-up. And in the end, we grew a bit more. In May, we got 2,000 users. In November, 5,000 users. And then one day, all of a sudden, since we were using the free version, somebody upgraded us to the gold version. And I got some messages on Yammer, oh, Rick, we're on the gold version. Thank you very much. I was like, I don't know, I didn't do. And I checked the billing, and I noticed that one colleague from North America, which we really loved, picked up his credit card and thought, well, I could use a gold subscription for Yammer, assuming he was only paying $5 for his own account. Actually, he was paying $30,000 for the whole network. So then what I did the next day was to the guy, well, first of all, thank you very much for upgrading the Yammer network. That's the thing we really need. But it could be that you do it in accident and that you don't want to pay $30,000. Please let us know, then we'll fix it. It was an accident. But it provides us with the impression, well, we can do way more with this. If we get to 6,000 users without any formal communication push, formal endorsement from the organization, all bottom-up, word of mouth, we should try to grow more because, well, we can do better. We're a company of 120,000 people, 6,000 users might be impressive, but it's only 5%. So we introduced new things. One of the things which was fairly obvious was benefit tracking. One of my dear colleagues, Dave Robinson, came up with the idea. He said, well, if there's a benefit occurring on Yammer, for example, somebody gets an answer really quick, you can use the tag benefit to tag it. And if you tag all those messages, which are actual benefits, then if somebody asks the question, what's the real benefit of Yammer for you? You can say, well, just search on benefit. And nowadays, 3 years later after the introduction, we have like 2,000 cases that are benefits. 2,000 documented use cases with real tangible benefits. And those are real business benefits, but those are also benefits from people who, for example, travel to Barcelona, don't know anybody there, but we have an office there and ask for a great restaurant and get a reply within 5 minutes. So Yammer for us is both business usage, but also very personal uses. Something else we introduced was Yammer Time. Sorry for the cheesy name, but we like cheesy names. What Yammer Time does is posting repeating messages. For example, we have like between 100 and 400 people joining the network every day. New people, growing. And telling them again and again the same story, introductory messages, pointing out help and other things is a tedious job. And if you're an IT company, why not automate such a job? And that's where Yammer Time came in handy. Because, for example, now this is my colleague Tim, and he's posting something about the groups on Yammer, how to use it, how to create them. And that's automatically scheduled. And every few days this message is repeated, so everybody who didn't see it, which can happen because we have 1,000 to 1,500 messages a day, and we don't expect everybody to read every message, you can pick up this message. Something else we implemented was the achievements bot to motivate people to post a bit more. This is Ron Toledo. Ron is our CTO from EMEA, and he got a Yam Magician badge, which basically means he posted more than 1,000 messages on Yammer. But we also provide people with badges for if their spot-on conversation start. And what's interesting is that Yammer adopted this little bit of gamification with our praise model. So Yammer is also, well, we are learning from Yammer, but Yammer is also learning from us. Then, and talking about windows of opportunities, there was a huge opportunity. Every 2 years within Capgemini, we have the so-called rencontre. And the rencontre is a gathering of our 400, 450 top executives. And basically, the only thing we used to know, if that meeting happened, there's a lot of change. It was completely untransparent, like some kind of Bilderberg group. Though with Yammer, we were able to provide, all of a sudden, participation with not only 415 execs, but 120,000 people across the globe. And we started during the rencontre with, well, a decent amount of users, 8,500. And all of a sudden, in August 2010, we got a new joiner. New joiner, his name is Paul Hermelin. For those who don't know Capgemini that well, and I don't blame you, Paul is our CEO. Paul is having a brilliant office at the Arc de Triomphe in one of the 12 castles. His view is the Arc de Triomphe, so that's brilliant. And still taking the time to join Yammer. And Paul has a certain status within our organization. What would you think was the first reply our CEO got on Yammer? And we were like, oh, this is really the first reply he got? Yes. But he was really happy with it. And what was interesting when Paul joining, Paul, the top guy from our company, the number 2, Nicolas, joining the next day, all of a sudden a lot of VPs reporting directly to Paul and Nicolas. Well, so, oh, we really need to be on the Yammer thing, otherwise we might get fired. So they were joining. And that's an interesting dynamic. And in September 2010, Rencontre took place. We grew the network just in a few months to 14,000 users. At the end of the year, 18,500 users. And July 2011, we finally made the decision, yes, we should go to a paid version. Just for the plain and simple reason, we had like 25,000 users on Yammer actively. So it was not really the question, well, the Yammer thing, will that really work in our organization? Yes, we were living proof. And we were the living nightmare of Yammer because, well, we were a freemium customer and having 25,000 people not paying anything, using a large chunk of your infrastructure is not the best thing for your business model. Nowadays, 44,000 users, growing somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 users a month. No top-down push, all bottom-up. And what we've seen, and that's the metrics part, what I think is very important, 32% of our users at least reads and is engaged. 25% of the users, which is 11,000, 15,000 people, depending on the month, is engaged, actively posting content, actively sharing, participating, which is rather a high number. And that's the important thing is, is you have to measure business benefits. All of you might know how to create a business case, and basically, in the beginning, we could have said, yeah, well, we have 5,000 users, we have 10,000 users, and we have this amount of messages, and we have so many groups. And for the basic manager, that's not really interesting, because, well, we are a public company, so we have shareholders, and if we would announce to the shareholders, well, we've invested a big chunk of money in a company, and now we have 20,000 people using it. That's not interesting for shareholders. Shareholders are interested in basic things: profit, margins, cost reductions, time to market, new assignment, wins. And especially with tracking the benefits, we were able to provide a concrete answer. We were able to provide information that if somebody completed his assignment at one of his customers, Yammer was helping him to get a new assignment 1 or 2 weeks quicker than in the traditional process. We were able to indicate that we have won some big projects because of the collaboration on Yammer. Because we are a big company, we have tons of information, but if you have a lot of information, that's also an issue in finding the right thing. And on Yammer, Yammer is a complete social search engine. So if you ask a question, there are now 44,000 other people searching for you, doing the search, taking your context into account, and providing you with the right result. Average knowledge worker is spending 2 hours each week just on searching for information, not on finding information, just searching. Yammer and tools like Yammer, for example, also like SocialCast, can cut that time at least in half, saving you 1 hour per employee per week, which I would say could be an interesting saving. And also, focus not on the big numbers. Total amount of users is interesting, but basically, most metrics I've shown you are vanity metrics. Total number of users, well, that's not interesting. Focus on the smallest user. For example, what's the engagement over time? Every user has a life cycle. And during his life cycle, he has a certain behavior. So it can be interesting that for now, 25% of the people are engaged, but of the 25%, is that 20% of the really core group over time? And basically, in the last 4 years, there's only a growth of 5%. So measure on a per users basis, or do, as this is, cohort analysis. Provide with small cohorts, preferably a month or a quarter, and see how users behave and what the behavior is. Because if you made an adjustment, you can see where users are dropping off. And in some networks or some tooling, it's very usual that users over time just drop off, while it is also usual in other networks that user adoption over time grows, since if you're using it for a longer time, you're using it more heavier and more often. So do your cohort analysis and focus on per user actions. It's more interesting to know the average message per user per month than having 10 to 1,500 messages a day. Because while we're growing with such an immense amount of people each day, yeah, the total number of messages is okay. But it can also be hiding a big problem if your average messages per user per month is declining, because then people are getting less engaged. And therefore, it's also important to do the cohort analysis so you can see in which group people are dropping off and people are still performing. And I would like to end with just 7 simple tips if you think, well, enterprise social networking, that could be something for us, that could be useful. However, well, we don't have the budget yet, not everybody is convinced, what should I do? Well, first of all, make sure adoption isn't an issue. Adoption is the biggest fear. We introduce a new tool, we spend a lot of money. Will it work? With most tools provide you with a freemium model, so you can start early on, get users on board, and we made the transition rather late with 25,000 users on board, which is already an adoption rate of over 20%, which was one of the highest for all the tools we use within the group. Don't focus too much on bottom-up. It's often said social, yeah, you should grow it bottom-up. People should really want to do it. Now, I would say involve management early on. One of our biggest sponsors was not a digital native. It was Andy Mulholland, our former CTO, who was back then 60 years old, so not a traditional digital native. But Andy was part of our global executive committee. So while we were pushing Yammer in the organization via our network, Andy was taking care of the global executive committee, pointing them to Yammer, telling them what they could do, and basically massaging them and preparing them that Yammer could be the next big thing within Capgemini. So make sure you have management, sponsorship early on. It makes life easier. And also, are there any managers in the room? I would deny as well. Convincing just one manager is a lot easier than convincing a whole group, because if you have a group of managers within a room, the only thing you get is questions and not any agreements. So if you decide to go for management, just do it one at a time, because it's a lot easier. And even better, if you do it really well, then the manager can convince the other managers, because, well, if a manager says something, it must be true. Use the data which is created. It's a strategic advantage. For example, we have now almost 500,000 messages created on Yammer, which I would say is pretty impressive, because we can analyze in which the messages, what the messages are posted, for what they are used. We're tracking the benefits cases. So we have proof it works. And if you're not really good in it, use experts from the outside. Even though we're a data company, we can do really great analysis. We're working together with the University of Sydney and Munich on researching our Yammer network and having some kind of seal of approval from academics is also easier to provide to people. Well, our Yammer network, and that's part of research, shows that 75% of the messages is conversational. If you compare to Twitter, 70% of the messages is never seen by anybody. So 75% of our messages on our network is conversational. Most of it is business-like. Answers on questions are there within 5 to 15 minutes. If you wait a day, you probably have 10 to 20 really great messages and a lot of new people you want to meet. And the last point is be patient. We took an extraordinary amount of time, 3 years, which I would not recommend, which is really long. But be patient in growing your network. Growing a network takes you at least 6 to 9 months, making the change happen, getting people used to it. And what's even better, since Tricia was talking around typewriters, this is one of my favorite pictures. This is Williamina Fleming, and the woman around her are computers. People doing highly difficult mathematical calculations. And currently the only computers we have are those boxes. We do the highly incredible calculations with. So social as a job, and that's really sad because it's my job, in the end will disappear. The typewriter or the computer disappeared. It became just part of our daily life. And social, I truly believe, will just be part of our daily life as all the other media we have. So now we're still thinking it's hard. In 10 years, well, probably we'll be laughing about it. So easy, and so it's. Thank you very much for your time.
Other questions? Do we have a microphone? Somebody running the microphone?
Hello. Great presentation, thank you. Just a couple of questions for you. You mentioned that the first year that you went on Yammer, actually, Ramin Mobasiri from eBay, by the way. I was supposed to say that, sorry. So the first year you were on the freemium, it took you about a year to get to some odd thousand users and so on. How did you, what did you do about security? Because people sign in with a Capgemini email, and then they leave the company, and they can still get to the information because the password is unique. How did you police that?
Well, in the first two or 3 months we didn't, because, well, it was a fairly small group. We knew everybody, and if somebody was leaving, we knew, and we could manually deactivate the profile. But when we started to grow, we were like, yeah, well, this can become, well, annoying or dangerous. And the Active Directory integration with Yammer back then was, and still is, in the paid subscription model. So since we were an IT company, we created a workaround basically downloading all the users in Yammer, comparing them via a tool with our Active Directory, creating a list of users which could be automatically deactivated. And after 2 years, Yammer got a bit annoyed by our workaround, so they disabled it. So the only thing we could do was creating a list of users to deactivate. But back then we had a network of 20,000 people, so we couldn't deactivate them all manually. So the thing we did was posting the list on Yammer and asking people, please, could you deactivate? And basically we had such an amount of users which are going through and deactivating them all manually. So that's the workaround we picked.
And then the second question I had was, how many networks do you have on Yammer?
Networks or groups?
No, networks.
Networks. Well, we have the basic Capgemini network, which is the global one, which also includes our other commercial brands, which are Society and Capgemini Consulting. And then we have several different networks for and with our customers for specific projects. And then there are specific knowledge area networks. So I would say in total somewhere between 20 and 50.
Okay, so from 20 to 50 networks, isn't the whole idea of enterprise social networking to not to have information silos? Because Yammer cannot merge networks. If you do merge the networks, you lose all your existing conversations. How did you go about that?
People. I would say people are a social glue within the enterprise. Of course, some information might be siloed, and the ties with one network with the other might be rather weak. But in general, what we have seen, and not only with the networks within Yammer, but also, well, we're an IT company, so we have some applications and some knowledge repositories. People are the ones who are connecting as the social glue. So if something happening in one network, which isn't known in one of the other networks, then people are basically the connecting factor.
Thank you.
I have a question. Microsoft bought Yammer. Does that mean anything to you?
Well, David Sachs got a lot of money, 1.2 billion, so that's, and he can host great parties. Now, I think it's interesting, especially given the track record of Microsoft. Microsoft is really great in productivity, enterprise productivity. Their Office suite, I would say, is the best example. SharePoint is, well, SharePoint. And therefore, Yammer can be interesting because Yammer already provided a nice integration with the web part with SharePoint, but now also probably will be integrated in the next few years in Microsoft Office, probably more and more in SharePoint, perhaps in Dynamic CRM, might be Skype integration within Yammer. So I would say for Yammer, given the size of Microsoft and given the fact that Yammer is still a separate business unit, it could be interesting years ahead, especially for enterprise productivity.
Any other questions?
Hi. Hi, good morning. Svein Arenes of Statoil. You talked about how you created these codes of conduct with a very bottom-up approach. But I also wonder, did you see the need to do other things to educate maybe people who came on after being convinced by someone else and not being early mover and maybe not a digital native? What did you do to sort of make sure that the activity there was really useful and not, because what I tend to see in our internal networks is that there are a lot of people who don't really know what creates value. They're more interested in what they have to say than what other people would like to hear.
I agree. First 5 minutes or first 5 days on Yammer are quite awkward because you're there and what should I do? Just like the first few moments on Facebook without friends, it's really awkward. What we did on Yammer were multiple things. Introducing people to Yammer, we often did some kind of pizza session, ordering some pizzas, having some consultants in a room and explaining what Yammer is and really guiding people through the process and making sure that the first hour was a great experience. Something else we did was providing e-learning module of just 5 minutes because, well, we're busy people, but 5 minutes, that's at least the amount of time you should have. Having people explained how they could sign up on Yammer, even if it's obvious, it's just entering your corporate email address and you're fine, but also explaining them that they could follow people, could join groups. And something we've done in the last 18 months is introducing the new to Yammer group on Yammer. Everybody who's basically joining Yammer, automatically gets a direct message. And in the direct message, it's explained, well, welcome to Yammer, here's the code of conduct. But if you have any questions, go to the new to Yammer group. And the new to Yammer group is a great way for basically new people to, well, feel confident in asking their questions in a fairly safe environment instead of directly diving in the wild mainstream.
Hi, this is Samuel from Sulzer. Do you use Yammer as a standalone solution, or is it integrated with other elements of your intranet landscape? And if yes, can you elaborate on that?
Yes, and I can elaborate on that. What we did back then with the Run Contra, we created a custom integration with the Yammer API with the Run Contra group. So people who are visiting the intranet site, and that's basically, well, 120,000 people because it starts up when your browser loads, not only get a glimpse of the Run Contra, but also all of a sudden saw a group with activity from their colleagues. And nowadays, Yammer has released, I think, 6 months ago, or a bit more than a year, they released Yammer Embed, which is more a native functionality to embed Yammer within your intranet. And that's the thing we're using now. And we also have it integrated in some of our bigger knowledge portals and some topic-specific portals. So it's fairly integrated 2 ways.
Okay, thank you so very much. Oh, we had one more question. Sorry, I didn't see you. Sorry. Sorry, Rick.
A little bit late finding the right words. Peter Kiro from Bayer Material Science. One question to you, Rick. You have a communication department for internal communication in Capgemini. Are they participating as well in this Yammer network? And do they post internal communication staff across this network?
Yes, they were not really present at the start, but our internal comms director, Laurent Delattre, really loves Yammer now because, well, basically it's a great way to get attention for the tool he's responsible for his intranet. Though we had also employee shareholders program, and around those kind of programs there's a big campaign, and there were some repeated messages on Yammer, which got quite some complaints. So you see for our internal communication department, there's a learning curve for them because traditionally communication is easy, you just put a message out and then, well, things happen. And now on Yammer, all of a sudden people are talking back to you. So what they are learning and still more and more doing, if they put out a message on Yammer and there are comments, they either reply themselves or they make sure the people who are mentioned in the article are replying to the conversation. So for them it's a huge change in their day-to-day business because it used to be easy. Now all of a sudden you have, well, 44,000 people with an opinion on your articles.
Thank you very much.
Okay, another round of applause. Thank you very much.